Hi, this is Jessica DeMassa, and I am here at Health Datapalooza. And right now I have Doug Lindsay with me. He is a transformational thought leader, and we'll talk a little bit more about what that is. But he's also here in one of the patient scholarships that are brought to you by AllScripts and PCORI. So happy to have you here at Health Datapalooza.
Thank you. Thank you.
No problem. So tell me a little bit about your patient journey, because we were talking about it before, and it is just fascinating to me.
Yeah. So when I was 21, I got sick. And I ended up spending the next 11 years homebound and bedbound. The doctors couldn't tell me what was wrong or what would help, and that meant there was no one coming to my rescue. So I decided to tackle my problem like a scientist and then partner with the doctors where we could. So I would search out answers and then we would work together. So I was able to figure out what was wrong, develop novel treatments to keep my condition at bay, and then eventually develop a surgery to fix me.
That is just insane to me. I mean, and that is like the ultimate in terms of like just the patient taking control of their health. Yeah. And so how long did it take you, I guess, to fix yourself?
Yeah, well, when we found out I needed a surgery, from then until I actually got the surgery was 4 years.
Okay.
So my whole journey, because it was an adrenal surgery and there's 2 adrenal glands, I had to have 2 surgeries. My whole journey ended up taking 14 years, 11 of those bedbound, but it was 4 years from the time it was like, there's a chance a surgery would help you, but none exists, to let's do this.
Okay, and you were telling me a little bit about that surgery too, where there was like kind of almost like an ethical question involved from a physician's standpoint. So talk a little bit about that.
So if you're a doctor, you take an oath to do no harm. And the reason we were facing a problem is that the only surgery that did exist would give me a new disease. So if you pull the whole adrenal gland, you have Addison's disease, you have to take steroid hormones for life or you die. And I didn't want a new disease, but if you're a doctor, giving a patient a new disease in the hopes that it's better than the one they have doesn't really appeal.
Right.
So if I came up with a process that gave us, what I did is when coming up with the surgery, I gave us a chance to get a better, best outcome. Instead of new disease 100% certain, we now had a chance to get the benefit without the harm.
Very cool. So what have you learned? I mean, as like a patient, and what would you pass on to others who are, I mean, we're all patients at one point or another. Yeah. What would you pass along as advice for patients who are navigating the health system?
Well, the first thing is you never want to have to be a rare case. But
if you can't avoid it,
exactly. Yeah, being an interesting person is okay. Being an interesting medical case is difficult.
Not so much, no.
Your job is to find doctors. Okay, your job is to determine whether the average outcome works for you.
Okay.
And in most of the time it does. If I broke my leg, they give me the cast. I don't need to reinvent the cast, you know.
Yeah.
So your task is to figure out whether the results that everyone gets are good enough for you. And if you have a rare disease, there's a chance that there isn't. And from there, then you need to sort of redefine the doctor-patient relationship just a little, so that the appointments and everything else work for a rare disease patient.
Did you find that the health system absorbed that well? Or was it like, I mean, that sounds like an uphill battle to me.
I had to find people who wanted to work with me.
Okay.
Yeah, and then from there, I needed to be respectful of what it meant to be a doctor.
Yep.
So I had to understand, I never asked them to do something they weren't ethically allowed to do, and I had to care as much for the position I was asking them to be in as I needed them to care about mine.
And so tell me, I mean, we were talking a little bit about what you do as a transformational thought leader, and so how have you taken what you've learned on this journey and become this now?
Yeah, well, when I got my health back, I wrote a book.
Okay.
It was very long and it's not published. That's okay. But part of the book were lesson chapters on the skills it takes to make unlikely things happen.
Okay.
So I have all of these lessons that I'd learned, and I've thought them through to the depth of a book.
Okay.
So that means when I'm building speeches or workshops for clients or talking to doctors or medical audiences, I'm able to pull from a whole host of lessons and figure out what would be applicable to the people hearing it.
Doug,
what do they
share
need to
one
hear?
With us? I want to know, it's like what's one tip for us to make unlikely things happen? I love that.
So one of the things you're going to need to know is that the best planning can get you is 90%.
Okay.
There's always going to be 10% that is a surprise, and that's why you need to have good people on the scene, and you need to be ready. There's, sort of complacent doesn't work, because planning is wonderful, but you're going to get there with metric tools and English, screws. You're going to get there and find that, your key card doesn't work. There's always a situation where, I was once at a doctor's appointment as a kid, and there was a woman there named Lindsay Douglas.
Oh,
so you get called, you go up, and it's not you. I've had, so you have to realize that the best planning can get you is 90%.
Okay.
And you do that planning so that you can focus on being in the moment and dealing with that 10%. That's why going in unprepared means there's still a mess coming. It might be a small one, but if you
Right.
put it on a mess because you didn't plan, now you have a lot to manage.
Okay,
So-
that's some good advice right there.
Yeah.
That's some good advice. All right, so last question for you. You're here
Yeah.
at Health Datapalooza on a scholarship, one of the patient scholarships.
Yeah.
And so what have you taken away from the conference?
So I knew a lot about one-on-one interactions in healthcare, and
Okay.
I'm here to learn about sort of system-wide stuff. I've heard a lot of things. Sometimes there are words that are just buzzing around the conference, but the biggest message that I heard was from the Deputy Secretary of HHS. He wants the new status for health records generated from the VA and within the system to be machine readable. That was the single nugget that I've heard that's going to change healthcare the most.
Cool.
Because being in this position means now you're taking a nation's worth of data and turning it into something that is analyzable by machine and can then be interpreted.
Very cool. Well, we are so happy to have you here. Thank you so
you.
much for joining me and telling me a little bit about your story. Thanks so much.
You're very
Pleasure to talk to you. This is Jessica DeMassa at Health Datapalooza. Thanks for joining us.